Okay, welcome. Welcome to the Citizens Advisory Committee on Measure Expenditures for Humboldt County, Measure Z, on Thursday, March 21st, 2024. Please join me in the salute to the flag. All right, thank you. Sean, could we have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Committee. Mr. Cole? Here. Ms. Miller? Ms. Trent? Here. Ms. Campbell?
Here.
Chief Robertson?
Here.
Sheriff?
Here.
Mr. Zemer?
Yes.
Mr. Bronkel?
Yes.
Ms. Long?
Here.
And Ms. Titus?
Here.
Thank you. Everyone's here. Looks like Ms. Miller is absent.
All right, I think she'll be here. So I'd like to know if there are any modifications to our agenda. Anybody has? No? The public? No? All right, thank you. Being no modifications, we'll move on to public comment on non-agenda items. If anybody would like to make a comment? Anybody online?
There are no raised hands.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. And the approval of March 14th action summary, draft of the minutes of the 14th.
Make
So,
a motion to approve the minutes of March 14th.
do we have a second? Okay, Tammy, second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So, Sean, if you could give us an administrative office update, please?
Don't have anything for you today, Chair. We can just go ahead and get into the rest of the
Oh.
agenda.
Well, all right. Did you make arrangements for us to be here till 5?
Yes.
Okay. So last meeting, we were kind of rushed because we had to be out by 4. Sean had a meeting, other people had things. But today, we can have the building until, I'm going to say 10 to 5, because we have to get out, and TSA doesn't work after 5. So we have to leave the building open if people want to come in for our meeting. So we have an extra hour. We have a lot to do. So I'm happy that we have that extension. And okay, today we're going to discuss the consideration for possible modifications to the applications. And were there 10? Right?
9, I believe.
Oh, 9. Okay, 9 agencies that committee members asked to be pulled to discuss. Yes, Bob?
I would like to go ahead and also include those that were flagged by Tammy in her spreadsheet from last week as well, if those aren't already on there.
The agencies that you tagged, flagged? I don't know if...
Do you have that list?
That would be project 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Actually, 22 was fine.
So are you asking that those have modifications?
Correct.
So that's your request?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get that, Sean?
Yeah.
Okay. Billy?
Point of order with Ms. Miller being gone, is Ms. Titus now a voting member, or is she still an alternate?
No, we only use the alternates when we do not have a quorum.
Got it.
So the alternates are just here for the discussion. They can be a voting member when we need an additional member for a quorum.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, so it's going to be hard for me to keep turning around, but I will do it. Maybe you could call each agency by number, Sean, since you can see the screen. So today, modifying means, when we talked last year about partial funding, because we knew we weren't going to have nearly as much money as we did last year, and we wanted to be able to fund people, even if we couldn't fund them for the whole amount. And so this year, we're going to be doing a modification based on committee members' requests to discuss it. So what I'd like to do is we'll call the agent, we'll name the agency. We're going to have public comment first, but we're going to call the agency and for the agency, and the person that chose that agency to be identified. It'd be really good if you could form your modification in the form of a, excuse me, in the form of a motion. And we can't make you do that, but, I would like to request that you, when it's your turn, you say, I would like to move that we reduce or modify this agency by whatever the amount is that you say. And then I will say, is there a second to that? If there's no second to that, then that motion has ended, but I will ask, is there anybody else on the committee that would like to modify this with a different amount? And then if there is, then that person can also put it in the form of a motion. It will just kind of, be more formal so that everything is exactly the same. And then if there is a second, then we'll call for discussion of that agency. Okay, and then we have to vote on that motion on each agency that has been called forward. Okay? Okay, so in the meantime, excuse me, I'd like to open this for public comment. Anybody that would like to come forward and make public comment on this item? Well, we're having public comment on, yeah. This would be good if you.
There's confusion out here as to whether we.
You got to come up.
Good afternoon, Chair Campbell and committee members. Chief Day from Fortuna Police Department. I will keep my remarks brief. I'm not going to go or spend a lot of time describing the Fortuna Police Department's SRO program. This is a program that pretty much looks the same as it always has as far as what the program entails and how we operate it at the Fortuna Police Department. This committee has been funding this position since 2017, with exception to last year when funding revenues were a little bit short. So here today just to advocate for the return of this program. It is a nationally recognized program that not only serves the schools in the city limits of Fortuna, but also 15 campuses throughout the Eel River Valley. We have so many ancillary activities that fall within that SRO program, which, as you know, is the Every 15 Minutes program, which is a great program that is meant to educate and teach our kids the real lifelong, lasting dangers of DUI driving or drunk driving. Over the last year, even though we weren't funded by Measure Z, we've continued to develop an additional curriculum for the schools, which also help us educate the youth on the dangers of fentanyl and opioid abuse. And when I submitted the original grant package this year, I did so with a voluntary reduction of administrative fees that were about $12,500 that were in our previous ask from prior years. So at this point, just having some time to kind of relook over the package, I'd also like to ask the committee to acknowledge a voluntary reduction of about $5,000 additional dollars. That would be in our training line budget of the package. I feel confidently as the agency head that I will be able to take care of the SRO's professional development or annual professional development through the PD's training budget. And so with that, I'm here to answer any questions if you have them.
It's just a public comment section, so we'll do questions. This is public comment, which we don't respond to, but we'll do that on the next item.
All right,
Okay.
thank you for your time.
Don't leave. I mean, don't leave the building. Okay, is there anybody else that has a comment, public comment?
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for having me again. Third time's a charm. I'm Fire Chief Nick Pape with Shelter Cove Fire Department. I just wanted to reiterate that we will take the $300,000 voluntary cut to our application, but that will be the only voluntary cut that the Fire Chiefs Association will make. We're representing 46 departments. If we get this cut that was proposed last week of $1 million, it's going to drop us down to about $27,000 per department, give and take what their allocations are. So remember, this is over 2 years when we were defunded last year. Last year, it was said that there weren't adequate funding to fund all the requests that your committee voted on. And the Board of Supervisors said, due to the lack of funding, we're going to cut you to $600,000. When we came back, we were again denied when County Roads was allocated $1 million. The $1 million allocations for this current year happened last year, but it will happen for this funding cycle with the permanent allocations for the next 3 years. It doesn't do anything to affect what happened last year and the lack of programs. Fire services in Humboldt County will still respond to 911 calls. They'll just be doing so based off of the discretion and the choices made by this committee with less funding to be efficient and safe and what roles they're going to be taking. So thank you guys very much.
Okay, thank you. I just want to not make a comment to you, but just make a general comment that just to remind everybody that Measure Z committee we're the recommenders, we're not the deciders. So we don't cut you. We just recommend what we can with all the agencies that have had requests. And you also have the opportunity, depending on, if you're interested or not, you can always go to the budget hearings in June and plead your case to the board. We don't make the final decision. We're basing all of this on what money we have. And so I just want to throw that out there, that you always have, the opportunity to go to the board. Is there anybody else that would like to make a public comment?
Good afternoon. Chris Gills, Petroleum Fire Chief. Thanks for having us again. First off, I want to say, like, all of us here we're all public servants, and we all care about and serve our local communities. And it's just hard to come up and argue against an officer in a school or the roads getting fixed and that sort of thing. And just the process, I don't know, it just feels kind of yucky. So that's just a thing. So last week, there was a group that came up and talked about how their community provides a certain percentage of the Measure Z funding for the whole county, or like their taxes. And I don't know, that just struck me the wrong way, because living in the South County, we don't have many businesses and all of that, but we all come here and put in our money, and then it comes from Humboldt Bay or wherever, and so the whole county comes here and spends their money, and like saying, oh, it's this group puts in this amount or that sort of thing. It just, I don't know, it doesn't really make sense to like that, and then speak just to the idea of a $250,000 to hire a grant writing service. Like, that's 1 1/4 Type 6 fire trucks. That's, that's the dispatching contract for the entire fire service. That's could potentially be the salary for 2 people for 2 years or something like that, who live in Humboldt County, know our area, know our people, and could write grants for everybody. I'm just throwing this out there. I know it's a different proposal, but like, just the thought. And yeah, I'd like to thank you guys all for your time, hard work, and I know it's not an easy job to do what you're doing, so appreciate it.
Thank you. Can I ask a question? The 300,000 reduction, is that from the Fire Chiefs Association, or is that the other request?
I believe that is from application number 10, the fire chiefs.
Okay. Someone else like to come forward?
Chair, board members, that 300,000 is from the county fire chiefs request. So Rick Nicholson, president of Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association, also chief of Ferndale Fire. Like everybody else has said, nobody's against school resource officers. We work with law enforcement quite a bit. I've used the LiDAR system, the older LiDAR system the sheriff has used on fire investigations. It's a phenomenal piece of equipment. Like everything else, it gets dated. Nobody's running a 10-year-old cell phone. Fire trucks are the same way. We bought used fire trucks. We updated from the 60s and 70s and some 80s to the 2000s. So a lot of people are still running 20-year-old trucks. Extrication tools, cars have gotten lighter, stronger. An extrication tool that was made 20 years ago will not cut today's cars. This year so far, fire agencies in Humboldt County have responded to plane crashes, auto extrications with fatalities, structure fires, auto fires, everything else. All those turnouts wear out, much like the sheriff's, body armors wears out, or the county roads trucks wear out. All these things wear out. And Measure Z was lobbied by the fire chiefs to provide funding for the fire chiefs and the county. And with the cuts last year, just for dispatch only and county planning, no equipment got purchased. Kind of like Nick said, we're putting in for 2 years worth of requests. By the time we order that equipment, we won't see it till next year at the earliest, just because supply chain lags, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not an easy job you guys have. We'd like to thank you for taking this time. We're open for questions later. And I'd really like to thank Chief Pape from Shelter Cove. He's driven the last 3 weeks up from Shelter Cove to attend this hearing. So thank you for your time.
Hey there, my name is Samantha. I'm the chief of Willow Creek Fire.
Thank you.
Myself and Chief David with Blue Lake, we put in a separate application for the out-of-district fees. We were encouraged to file separately from the Chiefs Association because that was an agreement we made with the county prior to Measure Z. Then it got pushed into the Chiefs Association allotment just because it was easier for accounting. But what we're asking for is much different than the Chiefs Association. But with that being said, I would like to say we both support the Chiefs Association 100%. And I know it's an easy one to look at and be like, well, it's 2.4 million. We can easily take some money off of that and give it to someone else. But like they've said, this is representing 46 fire departments. People need PPE, we need engines, we need to be able to show up to calls completely safe and with all the equipment that we need. So again, I want to say if you guys are going to take any money from the Chiefs Association, including the $300,000 that they've offered, we would rather pull our application and see the Chiefs Association funded 100% with what they asked for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Measure Z Committee, for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Drew Barber, Captain of Petrolia Volunteer Fire Department. Measure Z, as you all know, has provided key funding for rural Humboldt Fire Departments since being adopted by the voters in 2014. And I recognize that the choices that you all have to make are intended to support the public good, and I'm grateful for the process and to the voters for voting Measure Z in. I'm here to support the essential requests of the continued use of funding for remote fire and medical first responders, as some of the other folks have spoken to today. I want to let you know that that support is key to keeping our volunteer fire department members ready to respond safely and to safely return home. As a remote rural volunteer fire department, we're first on scene often for more than an hour, and we need to take care of our patients. We need to take care of the fire during that time. And during that time, we're using our used and dated equipment, and it's important that we have that kind of the equipment that's not worn out, as you all know. All of our volunteers are creative, they're committed, and they're skilled, and I'd like my team to have the reliable and modern equipment that we need so that we can rely on that, and I can assure my volunteers' families that they will return home safely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Measure Z Committee. Tom Matson, Director of Public Works for Humboldt County. First, I want to thank Tammy for her proposal last week, which would have made it a cooperative rather than the competitive, because as you can hear, all of these things are needed. They're necessary for our society, and we're just fighting each other for the dollars. I want to talk a little bit about having my equipment listed up there. That was actually my second priority. I put in 6 applications. I would rather drop 3, 4, 5, and 6 than touch that. I don't have the opportunity to run my equipment out of its useful life. I'm under state CARB laws that say after a certain date, I can no longer run that piece of equipment, no matter how much useful life it has left, or I'm subject to $10,000 a day fine for each piece of equipment. The three I have asked for are critical for our operations, and they rolled out January 1st. If you're wondering why I was in this situation, it's a thing called disaster response. Since 2017, we've probably had $50 million plus in storm damage that has come right out of the roads budget. While we do get some reimbursement, it is not 100% reimbursement, and sometimes it is 6 to 10 years down the line, and generally a lot less than what was originally committed. And so we are running in the red right now. We're having to do major budget evaluations this year for what we're going to be able to even do next year. So if you want me to reduce the equipment, I would have to go piece by piece. And frankly, the water truck, and then the crane truck, and then my transfer truck, realizing I'm going to have to contract all those services out at prevailing wage because I don't have the equipment to do them in-house. So rather than ask me to reduce that, I would throw all the applications 3 through 6 off the board if I have to do that to keep the equipment. I am keeping the Mattole Road as the #1 because we made a commitment to the people in Mattole Valley. They came out in force the last time we put this application in, and it was at the top. It just didn't get funded. So thank you for the time, and thank you for all your efforts you put into this.
Thanks, Tom. No, this is just public comment. You can ask at the next item. Okay.
Charlie or Crystal Perez from Arcata Police Department. Just considering asking you to consider the full request. We're not asking for 2 diversion counselors and an SRO. We're only asking for 1 diversion counselor. And just a reminder that we do serve, Blue Lake, Arcata, Trinidad, McKinleyville, and we're now teaching parenting classes in Fortuna as well. So we are serving the whole county. And so just reiterating that we don't have fluff. We're running on a skeleton crew, 2 people serving a lot of us. So thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Dylan Clevenger, Sumeg State Park lifeguard. I drove all the way here, so I figured I had to come up and say something, advocate for my program as well. And it's inspiring hearing everybody else talk, but just wanted to point out I'm probably one of the only state employees in the room. The busiest, most dangerous beaches are Big Lagoon County Park. I think the busiest beach north of San Francisco anywhere is Moonstone County Beach. Mainly that's why we're going for this application, is because we don't discriminate, right? If somebody drowns, if a beach is busy, if a kid's playing too close to Big Lagoon, where there have been numerous tragedies, we go talk to them. We handle that. And we aren't asking for equipment. Just to be clear, we're asking for a seasonal 2 salary. It's the reason for our 25% reduction, 3 quarters, 9 months out of the year, help us cover that. And we work with kids as well, all the way from Oric to Carlotta, and go into their classes, and it's the same thing. Tell them just what I told you. Big Lagoon's dangerous. Humboldt Lagoons are dangerous. And we talk about state parks. We talk about county parks. We're really trying to create a culture of water safety. And thank you, guys.
All right, thank you very much. Is this the time you want to talk about the permanent funding for 3 years?
Sure, I can go ahead and put that onto the screen if you'd like, Chair. Sorry if it's not too visible for everybody. But as your committee is aware, the board this year approved a 3-year spending plan for certain Measure Z applicants in county departments. Up on the screen is the allocations that are set to be provided in fiscal year 24-25. There on the left side Kamau Medical Center will receive $325,000. These are all without an application process. Fortuna, City of Fortuna will receive $200,000 for their drug task force officer. Fire is slated to receive just over $1 million. And Star Ambulance, which serves the Highway 36, is slated to receive $137,000. And over on the next 2 years, pieces that I'm highlighting now, that's fiscal year 25-26 projections. And then fiscal year 26-27 are the projections. And I say projections because this will vary just a little bit because there are a couple county departments that have 4 staff or fewer, and we're going to make sure that those small departments receive funding for their staff, but that will fluctuate the amount available for the following 2 years. But fiscal year 24-25, we know those figures to be ready for the coming fiscal year.
Okay, and so just for the public to know, these are the money that we have available to recommend does not include that.
Correct. The money that you're going to recommend to the board is above and beyond what is included in this 3-year spending plan.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So I think that we'll get into the committee consideration for possible reduction. It says I would like to call it modification instead. That's my word. But I just want to say one thing. I've been thinking a lot about, this is new. We're working with it. We're trying to give money to more people, or at least fund people. And we need to, I would like the committee to keep in mind that it's like if I have a household budget, which I don't, but if I did, and somebody came in and said, okay, we're going to modify your budget and you can't buy as much food, which would be good for me, but not buy as many plants for your garden, and not take as many trips to see your grandchildren based on the money I'm going to give you, which are my 3 favorite things in the world. I think I could probably adjust my personal budget and still come within that amount that I would be given. And it would be up to me to make that decision. And I think with the agencies that we're working with, we may want to make a modification, but I don't feel it's up to us to tell them exactly how they're going to spend it, or, you know, we're going to take this much away because we don't like that or we don't agree with it. I think I would like to see that we're modifying it maybe by that amount because you don't like it, but it's up to them to spend their money in the spirit of Measure Z. And they have quarterly reports. They have to show that they're spending it in the spirit. And so I don't think that it's up to us to get into the weeds of how people spend their money when we give it to them. I think that's up to them. And anyway, that's just my thought on it. So as we go forward with making recommendations for modification, I guess are these all the ones that you were talking about, Bob? Or are there more?
There were more. It was from Tammy's spreadsheet that she presented last week.
Okay. Sean?
Can I ask Sean Quincy to update the list with the budget to recognize the recent adjustments? Because if I look at the totals at the end, it says we are able to recommend 4.1 million. The amount requested over that allocation is 1.6, and we have 864,000 in reserves, which is for any of the 4 that get the budgeted amount that are not fully funded, correct? So ostensibly, we have really an overage of around 760,000. So I'd like to get a more accurate number of what the bottom line is that we're talking about.
So including the $300,000 reduction from fire, That reduces the overall request to $5.45 million. That puts us over the available amount to allocate by $1.3 million. We have $864,000 in reserves. That is meant for those four projects in the 3-year spending plan. If our revenues don't come in, that's meant to fully fund those specific projects. If we wanted to consider moving that money and using it for additional allocations, that would require separate board action, and it would be against prior action that this committee took, which specifically said to the board that you want to use the reserve for those 4 applications in the case of a low revenue year.
Right. And then Fortuna PD offered 5,000 as well.
That's correct. So this is including that $5,000 reduction amount.
All right, thank you.
Can you tell me that number again? Oh, did you write it down?
So with the fire reduction, the SRO reduction, $5,000, $5,000 reduction from City of Blue Lake, $19,000 reduction from Redwood Parks, and $325,000 reduction from Kamau Medical Center. That puts the total request at $5.454 million. And that is $1.3 million over the amount available to allocate this year.
Kamau had a reduction?
Their original application was for $447,000. And so peeling off $325,000 because they are already to receive that money, that puts their request down to $122,000.
Okay, I get it, okay. Okay, so I guess I'll let you take charge of calling upon this, because I can't, I mean, I can see my short list, but do the long list.
Sure. So the first application that is in your agenda is the Fortuna School Resource Officer. And to reiterate your point, Chair, the format that we wanted to discuss this was the committee member or committee members who are interested in discussing the application should probably lead with the amount that they want to modify the application by, and it would be helpful if it was made in the form of a motion, followed by a second to open it up for discussion.
Right. Bob?
I'd like to ask the applicant a question before we proceed, if that's possible.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, are we on for 10 more?
Last week, staff from your office indicated that overtime was necessary for this particular position. And the question that I have for you, is it possible for this position to go ahead and flex their schedule in a way where overtime wouldn't be needed?
Absolutely not. According to the rules and policies of the City of Fortuna, we do not use flex time in that instance. So what I can say is that in previous years, we have absolutely and consistently come in under budget with our ask, and overtime is just kind of a funny animal. It's, you know, we try to have a crystal ball and forecast and look at exactly what that overtime is going to look like for the year. But a lot of it also does depend on those special programs that I spoke to earlier with every 15 and things of that nature that occur. So, but the important and significant point here is that we have always and consistently been under budget.
Maybe the phrase flexible schedule was incorrect. Perhaps it's assigning the schedule for staff, meaning that if there's a football game that they need to be at that night, is it possible for the schedule for that day to be shifted so that they start later, end later, and do not need overtime to attend the football game?
Yes, absolutely. When you use the term flex time, that meant something else to me.
So it sounds like it is possible to have a program run without overtime by being able to schedule the officer for key blocks of time when they're needed?
I would say it would be a tall ask to say that operationally you're not going to have any overtime ever. Fortuna Police Department is a small department. We suffer from the same operational issues as any other law enforcement agency in the area. So overtime is going to be a part of every position for us operationally. You just can't survive without it. People, for whatever reason, go out ill, sick, they need time off. If you're having staffing shortages, you're going to make those gaps up with overtime. But if you're asking me, within a program, can we be flexible operationally and slide their schedules to minimize overtime? Then the answer is absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, last week we asked the lieutenant to help us understand how the roll-ups are higher than the base salary. I understand the PRO system. In my organization, the roll-ups are 50 to 60%. In the application, they're 110%. So it's a significant increase. I don't know if you can help explain that a bit more.
I mean, I think I can add some information here. In the historic application for Measure Z for the SRO, we had a tenured senior officer that was at the top of the pay scale that was fulfilling that role. I think we always plan for that because of specialty positions such as the SRO spot. We wouldn't not normally put, a newer officer that is at the bottom of that pay scale. And so there is a difference there. We also have to account for salary increases from year to year based on, when negotiations are and whether that increases or not. But previously, in the last couple of years, they have started to increase. But to get you a full and comprehensive answer to that, I think it would be best to either bring the finance director back in person so that he can kind of go through that, or we could respond in writing directly from the finance manager.
Okay, Sue?
I have the breakdown from the finance manager if you're interested in hearing it. Oh, sorry. I have that
Thank you,
breakdown from
Chief.
our finance director if you guys want me to read it to you.
Do you want that? Do you want her to read that to you?
Yes.
I'm just going to round the numbers. Medicare, $1,219. Medical insurance, the employer portion, $32,453. CalPERS, about $45,000. And workers' comp, $12,700. And the total is $90,786.
Some expensive health insurance.
Absolutely. But that's what the city of Fortuna offers.
Right.
Yeah. So that is the breakdown.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob, was it you that pulled them? City.
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion to?
I would like to make a motion to reduce the application by the amount of the overtime of $18,000.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Well, then, have we had enough discussion, or do you want to discuss it more? Sue?
I would like to add one thing. When it comes to overtime, you can schedule according to football games and all of those things. What you can't schedule is when there are issues at the high school that cause lockdowns or bomb threats or any of those kind of things that have happened recently, because that investigation starts the minute they hear about the issue, and it is ongoing until they solve it. They don't go home at 5 o'clock and say, we'll just figure it out tomorrow. And that's one of the reasons for some of the overtime that we are not going to be able to schedule.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
So is there any more discussion?
I just, a question for clarity for us in this process. As we're talking about discussions or deductions, do we want to just say how much we want to reduce the application by, or what is the amount that we want to fund?
Either way.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do.
And I would really like, just want to clarify, we want to avoid saying we want to avoid line item reductions. So if we're saying we want to reduce this application, we just say I want to reduce this application by $18,000.
Right, and it's okay to say why. I mean, there's no, but again, they may be able to have overtime. It's not up to us to say they can't have overtime, but they may be able to reduce that some other way. Because once they get that money, that's, as long as it's within the spirit of the application. Okay? Okay, is there any more discussion? Sean?
I'd just like to acknowledge again that the chief made a voluntary reduction that's subsequent to our conversation last week. So,
Yeah,
just putting
thank you.
in.
Okay, we have to vote on each one of these, so do you want to do how many, do a roll call, or just, are there any yeses, any nos?
Since we're all here today, we can just do hands up.
Okay,
Okay, hopefully it'll make it a little bit faster.
okay. Do you want to do that for us?
Sure. So the motion, I believe, is to reduce City of Fortuna's application by $18,000. And if you would please raise your hand if you wish to vote yes on this motion. And voting no? Okay. Motion fails 2-6.
Okay, is there anybody else on the committee that would like to make a different,
I would make the motion to reduce the amount by $5,000.
more than the 5, he already reduced it?
No, just the 5,000 that the chief said.
I don't think we need to vote on that, because he reduced it himself, right? Yeah, thank you, though.
So then I would make the motion that we agree with that, and
Oh, okay, is there a second to that? Okay, I'll second that. We don't, but she wants to. Okay, all in favor of that? Accepting his 5,000?
no, I wanted to make the motion that we would reduce it from 202,000 to whatever that minus 5,000 is.
It already, just for clarification, it already is. He reduced it, and so we get a vote on it later, right? And whether or not, with a priority of that, right?
When we rank them,
Rank them.
yeah.
Correct. So you're all correct. The chief came up and voluntarily reduced his application by $5,000. And since the motion failed to reduce it by $18,000, it would just revert down to the $5,000 reduction to $197,000. I hear what you're saying, Ms. Long, about agreeing with that. It can go either way. If your committee wishes to weigh in on that, you can absolutely vote on that if you want to. But without a vote, it can be reduced down $5,000.
But we're not voting on whether we're going to do that, take that one yet. Okay. Sorry, I didn't understand.
No, that's
where you were
okay.
going. Okay.
Okay, the next one is on my list, but I don't have Tammy's list. Is there 2, 3, or 4 on that list? Okay, so the next application is number 5 for the City of Arcata. Okay, and which committee member pulled that? Are you the one that asked? Okay.
Yeah. I would like to propose a reduction of $15,000 to this application.
Okay. Is there a second? No?
I will second for discussion. Where did the 15 come from?
I was looking at roughly not funding 90% of this position, and if the city of Arcata could come up with the 10%, I felt that it was something that was of value to this committee.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay. So do you want to call for the vote? Oh, Glenn did.
Oh,
He did. You said second, right?
I said second for discussion, but
Right.
a second is a second.
Yeah,
so-
right. You said
So
it.
I should come to vote.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion is to reduce City of Arcata's application by $15,000. Please raise your hand if you wish to vote yes. 1, and raise your hand if you wish to vote no. I'll go ahead and eliminate this extraneous second part of the vote in the future. Motion fails 1-7.
Okay, is there anybody on the committee that would like to make a recommendation for a different amount? No, okay, seeing none, we'll move on to application number 8.
Yeah, so Chair, I had application number 6, as Mr. Bronco noted, that was the City of Trinidad,
Okay.
but City of Trinidad has withdrawn their application, so it moves down to application number 8, Willow Creek and Blue Lake out-of-district response.
Okay. And who pulled that one? Was that you? Okay.
This one I'd recommend reducing the funding to 0.
Okay. Is there a second on that? So a no fund.
Second, because they said that if we were going to reduce fire, they would reduce theirs, but we haven't got to the fire yet, so it's kind of hard to know.
Okay. Do you want to take fire first? We don't have to go in this order.
They only wanted to reduce it if we were going to reduce fire, so maybe we should take fire first.
Okay, that's fine. So we'll just leave this on the table. So do you want to go with fire next?
Sure, we can go with fire next.
Let's just do that.
Okay, so this is application number 10, the Humboldt County Fire Chief's application, originally submitted for $2.4 million. There was a voluntary reduction of $300,000. So without action from your committee, this application would be valued at $2.1 million.
Billy?
Just historically, Sean, how much have we funded fire besides last year, right? Last year was an anomaly, $600,000. I know, and I know that Nick has made this point as far as trying to make up for last year. But historically, since the inception of Measure Z, what has been the annual allocation for fire?
So since 2015-16, fire has been allocated $16.1 million. And annually, if you include last year, their annual allocation is about $1.8 million. If you give me a second, I can run the total taking out last year.
Sean, I have a list per year if we want to do that.
So if you take out last year, their average annual funding is about $1.95 million.
Were you finished?
I'm finished,
Okay.
yes.
Bob?
To tie on to Sheriff Hansel, what was the amount that the board allocated for fire for this year?
Was $566,000.
For next fiscal year. And then for next fiscal year, they're allocated $1,027,000.
Correct. For fiscal year 24-25, their allocation stands at $1,027,000.
Okay. Tammy?
Okay, first of all, I want to say I strongly support fire, and I'm actually currently working with Fortuna Fire to try to get more funding for them. But if we fund fire $3.4 million this year, that leaves hardly no other agencies to get funded, and that's why I was trying to come up with that list. As I believe it was the Petrolia Fire person said, all of these things are so important, all of these, so it's hard to pick one against the other. In the past, the fire department has had their highest year of funding was the year that we had that real excess funding, which was $2.7 million. All the other years, it's been lower. My proposal is to fund $1.4 million, which gives them a total of $2.4 million, which is the second highest that they've ever gotten in the 10 years that we've done that. And by doing that, that leaves money to be able to fund a lot of these other important yeah, projects or whatever they, applications.
Yeah, okay. Is there a second?
What was your number again, Tammy? I'm sorry.
I make the motion to fund 1.4 million.
I'll second that.
Okay. Sean, you're first.
I strongly disagree. I don't think it's accurate or equitable at all to look at the last few years and say, oh, this is the amount they got, this is what we should give them now. The ask right now is 2.1 million, not 3.4. The 1 million for next year is 50% of what our historical need has been. Last year, this committee voted for the 6th year in a row, as long as I've been on this committee, that this was the #1 priority, and the fire agencies didn't even get 20% of their ask. Other agencies, including Fortuna PD for their drug task force, got 100%. When it came back at mid-year and there was a surplus, the supervisors gave roads an additional $1 million. So while I appreciate the attempt to be equanimous to every other agency here, we're only talking about a $760,000 shortfall that perhaps we can deal with in other ways, but the impact, as Chief Pape said, of cutting another $1 million is going to continue to put us behind in the needs we have in the county, and it's just going to extrapolate the problem and not help us meet the needs of our communities.
Glenn?
A couple of things, just for clarity. The process now has been bifurcated by the action of the Board of Supervisors. So the discretionary amount in front of us is a very different process than the amount that's been awarded by the board, basically pursuant to our request to try to bring some stability to the fund and also limit to some degree the county's rapid overrun of the fund in total. So when you say if you take 3.4, you've essentially exhausted the discretionary amount, that's not accurate for a couple of reasons. First of all, with the reduction, the totality going to the fire agencies would be $3.1 million, but $1,027,000 of that is in the external process, not before us. So I think the characterization that the fire is essentially causing other entities not to be able to be funded is simply not accurate. The other thing I would say is this committee has worked over a number of years trying to instill the concept that it is important to have the partner agencies funded at a reasonable level. If you were to take the quote-unquote average that the county agencies were funded over the last year, you would find that they have outstripped that by a radical amount, even with the limitations that the Board of Supervisors instilled this year. So I'm uncomfortable with comparisons that are not apples and oranges, but apples and elephants, quite frankly. Historic averages are fine if you don't instill the cost of living changes and the purchasing power effects of what's happened over the last 8 or 9 or 10 years. And as I said, the county side of the ledger is funded at current cost, irrespective of what their average was in prior years. So I think trying to use this prior year average for this one particular application is a real serious mistake.
Ginger, I'd like to make a comment.
Okay, Bob's first and then you. Okay.
This is an unusual year for us, and the fact that the board has taken the position to pre-allocate certain monies for certain projects. And then we have the application process coming in from the same applicants asking for additional monies and wrestling with how much a particular agency may have historically gotten every year, combined with this new twist where, at least from my perception, you got this guaranteed revenue stream of $1 million coming from the board toward fire that could then be supplemented with Tammy's recommendation of a second $1 million, and that then provides fire with a normal year's worth of funding that they would normally see on year-to-year basis. So that's kind of the vantage point that I'm looking at, just through this interesting lens that we're now dealing with.
It really is. Okay, Mac?
I don't think we've ever had a normal year. Every year there's been some either fiscal anomaly or social anomaly that has caused us to have to continually reevaluate our priorities. And this is why we're here. We have to reevaluate our priorities. And so as I do that, I look back at why was Measure Z successful within this community? And it was to ensure emergency response. And for me, Humboldt Bay Fire's application represents a huge percentage of the reality of that response. And so for us to tell them that, you know, we know we're getting some funding here, so we're gonna say what you can have, not listen to what you're saying you need. They're saying this is what they need to provide service. And on this topic, this is one of the rare ones that I'm really willing to listen and not try to pull back, because I feel this service is the service that our community really wanted to see supported by voting Measure Z and Measure O.
Glenn?
Just a minor correction, but it might be an important one. Humboldt Bay Fire is a specific fire entity that serves the area. You know, there used to be Humboldt Fire District in the city of Eureka. The application is from the County Fire Chiefs Association, which is a distinct entity.
Absolutely. Sorry for the agency confusion.
I just want to say, you know, this is a really difficult year for us, but in looking at all of the agencies that respond, they have to get there on the roads. You know, they have to. And some of our roads are so bad that the fire, you know, it's difficult to go. And there have been times when roads didn't get any funding from us at all. And so I'm just speaking in terms of, you know, we still have to measure what for everybody, you know, what's good. So.
That to roads is very important. Roads does get a almost $10 million budget from the county, and sometimes I'm flummoxed by why roads has to come here and beg Measure Z committee for money for something that the taxpayers pay taxes for. I also just want to reframe the conversation in that the Fire Chiefs Association and the majority of the fire agencies in this county that serve all the communities receive no tax revenue. I'm very fortunate as Humboldt Bay Fire, as well as Arcata and a bit to Fortuna Fire, that we receive tax revenue from the support of public, but all those other agencies don't. And that's why I believe, to Nick's point, that the voters felt so strongly about supporting the measure, and that's why we're here.
Billy?
Yeah, this is a difficult process, as we can see. That's why oftentimes we just prioritize and let the Board of Supervisors do what they do. Because the reality is no matter what we recommend, they can end up fully funding whatever application passes them through us. So, I love the intention of trying to fund everyone, but the reality is no matter what, you know, we do, we approve the applications. Those approved applications, no matter what rank, will get looked at by the Board of Supervisors and, you know, and possibly fully funded or modified their funding. And so we're going to do our best to try and find a consensus here of what we can do. But if we can't, you know, we just prioritize like we do, and we let the Board of Supervisors do that tough job, which is what they're elected to. But I do appreciate Chief Robertson. You know, when you talk about taxpayers' money and what this is all about here, it's difficult right now. We do have a reduction in the county, and I wish that, you know, personally, that the county would prioritize what the people think is the priority, and that is public safety and roads. Exactly what Measure Z is supposed to be all about. And I wish that the general fund would fully fund all those things, and that we could have this extra fund to not, you know, fund these things that the county should be funding already.
Just enhance what they already have. Okay, is there any more discussion? Okay. Well, then I will call for a vote. Do you want to call for the vote?
Sure, yes, I can do it. And so just as a point of order, you put a motion out there, you put a second. Before a vote is called, committee members can always retract their motions if they would like, or we can go forward with the vote.
Right. And we also have the ranking process, which is the second part of all this. Right?
Okay, I'll go ahead and go forward with the vote. If you would, so the motion on the table is to modify the fire chief's application to $1.4 million. If you would like to vote yes on this motion, please raise your hand. And that's 4. If you would like to vote no on this motion, please raise your hand. 4 to 4. You guys do not make anything easy.
Okay.
Yeah, so a tie in this instance doesn't change anything. A tie
Right.
is essentially a no.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to now we'll go to the Willow Creek Blue Lake Fire. Right, number 6. Who was the one that pulled that? You, okay. Do you want to speak to that?
We didn't solve our problem.
That's application number 8. I move to reduce the funding for that application to 0.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
I have one concern about if we go outside of the fire chief's ask with another department, will this continue to happen every year? If you know, a fire department within the Chiefs Association has something extra that they want, so will we continue to see more departments come in and ask for things outside of what the fire chiefs are asking for?
That is a good question. I'll speak for the Fire Chiefs Association and Chief Nicholson can add if he wants. But yeah, that's the same concern we have. Had a very transparent, positive conversation with Chief Smith and Vanuku, and they had external pressures and recommendations to solve this problem. They're pursuing other avenues with the county and the state, but they were directed to submit this application, understanding the impact it would have on the Fire Chiefs Association, and the agreement we made with this committee several years ago to not bring 46 different applications. So is there a concern for what you just stated? Yes. All I can say is the chiefs will continue to advocate against separate applications, but in this case, the transparency from the chiefs of Blue Lake and Willow Creek, acknowledging the impact of that and basically saying if it impacts the Fire Chiefs Association, they would withdraw their amount, is I guess, a best case compromise of everybody's concern about it.
So is that a second? Do you want a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay, is there any other discussion about this?
I have a quick comment.
Okay.
I really feel the topic that we're coming up on this one is something that we would resolve during the ranking process rather than the reduction process. Because I feel the reduction process needs to be about the application itself, not in context to other applications.
I agree. I feel like we're duplicating processes here, and I would just echo what Nick said. I think we could have resolved this issue as probably others with the
Okay.
ranking.
Okay.
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay. So the motion fails.
Can I just say that this reduction process is a process that this committee asked for. This is, you all wanted a mechanism to reduce these applications. So I hear what you're saying about duplicating processes here, but this is something that you all discussed and took a vote on.
And I would just say, at least my understanding was that was in answer to certain committee members' requests to allow partial funding. And also, we don't have a really solid agreed-to process here. So I think we're working out the kinks in the road. So it looks ugly and it feels worse than that. But that's just what we're trying to figure out.
Okay.
I have a suggestion. For the ones that, like this one, for instead of voting to not fund it, just rank it low on when we do the second part, just rank it at a lower rate for any of the ones that people don't feel that we need to fund.
Well,
In light of the number of projects that we reviewed so far in this process, would it make sense to stop what we're doing, since it sounds like it's very uncomfortable in how we're going through it, work on ranking the projects first, and then looking at where reductions might be?
well, if we don't fund something during the ranking process, then it's a moot point, right? If they don't come up within a certain, number. And the way that when we rank, then it starts, we start at the top, and it's like we just keep going until we get to the 4.1 million, and then anything below that is not funded, right? I mean, that's how the ranking process works. So I don't know how we could do it beyond that, because they would already be out of the mix. Glenn? I know what you're saying, but I don't know if we can do that.
I understand it, and I'm sensitive to the uncomfort or discomfort that people are perceiving. But the simple fact of the matter is that if an application is submitted to us at a different financial level, my vote for ranking may be at a different position. So since these projects had been identified by a committee member for some discussion, at least, of the funding sources, I think there is value in going through them and letting the committee member advocate for whatever change he or she may have, thought was appropriate. Because, like I said, in my case, the level of funding that is ultimately addressed by the committee isn't a component of how I will rank them. So I think it makes sense to complete the process that we've identified to the public that we were going to pursue. I understand it's uncomfortable, but so be it, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we need to go through every application and have this kind of discussion. I think the intent was, as far as I'm concerned, was to, if we had questions about the financial aspect or the budget of an application, this is the forum to discuss it or ask questions, but we certainly don't need to rehash every single thing. And also, the ones I submitted, was that 3 weeks ago? I don't really need any more discussion on them because several of them have mitigated themselves. So I think we can speed up the process, but meet the intent.
And how do you propose to do that?
Exactly what I said. If any committee member would like to discuss a financial change on any application, then that's what we're doing. But we don't need to go through the entire list that Ms. Trent provided, that Mr. Bronkel wanted to go through. I think that's unnecessary.
I think if we change the application, though, if we change the amount, we have to vote on it, right? If they change it, that's different. Like if an applicant wants to reduce, but if we want them to reduce it by an amount, then we have to vote on that. So
if a committee member wants to reduce it, then that's what we're doing.
right,
Yeah, let's do it.
I thought that's what we were doing.
Well, it's getting cumbersome because I think we have almost every application under consideration now.
Oh, I don't have that list. Sue?
I just need clarification, Ginger. So if we'd not vote to reduce the fire, so it's at 2.1 million. So when the ranking comes around, if that one ranks at the top, they get the 2.1 million? Or do we talk about it again as far as giving them a lesser amount?
Yes,
So we're stuck with the 2.1 because we didn't have a motion passed to reduce it. If I would have known that, I would have made a new motion. Okay.
so we are still within this item G2. If that item wants to come back up for discussion, this committee can continue to do that. and make another motion to modify those applications.
To modify the ones we've already voted on?
To modify the fire chief's application
Okay.
or any of the applications that we've talked about. I know this is a new process. Once we get done going through the applications that we have identified, we will make a motion to approve the entire list, the brand-new application list with all the new values.
Mhm.
Then we'll be done with item G2 and move on to
Okay,
the
Billy.
ranking.
I'd like to call up Tom Matson, Public Works Director, please. Good afternoon, Tom. Thanks for being here. You have several applications here. One is for heavy equipment, and you said that is your top priority. Is that correct?
No, the Mattoll Road would be the
Mattoll.
top priority,
Okay.
but then we would segment. But what is your overage right now? Because I may have a proposal just to resolve this.
Okay.
Over by 1.3 million.
Okay, I can't get there. I'll go through the process.
Okay. Thank you.
So are we going to move forward what we've been doing, just quicker? You know, we don't need, okay. So the next,
So right now, Chair, if I may, there's still a motion on the table from Mr. Bronco on application number 8
I'll
for the
withdraw.
Willow Creek.
he withdrew that.
Okay.
Oh, for the Willow Creek one?
Yeah.
I'll keep it there.
Oh, okay.
Second.
Is there a second?
Yes, I'm second.
Okay. Discussion?
In the context of them saying that they would like to prioritize the other fire application, I think we could stand to do at least some reduction to that application, and I think we should, as a starter, consider maybe a 75% funding.
Funding, okay.
Are you making that in the form as a friendly amendment to my motion?
It was seconded, so that was in a friendly discussion.
It's in the discussion.
Do you want to make it in the form of a friendly amendment so I could accept it?
I will modify the statement to a friendly amendment to the proposal,
I
or
accept
motion.
To fund it 75% of the 216,000? I'm not seconding that.
To fund at or reduce by?
To fund at.
Fund at.
that. Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry. I thought
Sue-
it was reduced by.
Okay.
Okay. So where do we stand? So Sue has withdrawn her second.
Well, based on the amendment of funding at 75%, yes.
Right,
Bob thought he was reducing it by 75%.
okay. Is there any discussion? No? Okay. Should we vote?
I'll go back to the first motion of reducing it to just nothing.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
Okay, motion on the table is to reduce application number 8 for Willow Creek Blue Lake Fire Response to 0 from 216,000. Please raise your hand if you would like to vote yes on this motion.
Oh, great.
See 4 yeses, and please raise your hand if you'd like to vote no. And 4 noes. Motion fails.
Okay. So the next application is the County Administrative Office. Who's the one that pulled that? Oh, okay, go ahead.
I had it reduced down to 200,000 from 275. I asked for it to be reduced down to 200 instead of 275.
I'll second.
Okay, Glenn?
Clarification from staff, if you will. If I remember, this was a tiered application where a portion of it was development of a strategic plan. Then there were some other, I'll call them overhead administrative elements. And then the final tier was actually supplying services to the Measure Z applicant group. Is my memory not correct about how it was tiered? And my question is, if in fact it was reduced to the 200,000, what specific services would be lost?
It's a good question. And in preparation for this conversation, I've invited Christy Moore from the Ferguson Group to help provide additional details on this application. And she's on Zoom. Christy, if you're there, could you let me know if you heard the question and are able to respond to that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. I'm not on video though, right? Or do?
No,
I
you're
can
not.
be. Okay, all right. I was gonna say I can be if needed. In terms of the, yes, it is a package. It is to create a strategic plan for all funding needs throughout the county. And then it also includes project readiness, project planning, grants research and funding research for any of the projects identified or programs identified through the needs assessment process. And it also includes grant writing. So in terms of reduction, this is packaged through the California State Association of Counties grants initiative. So if reductions are made in the program or the amount of funding allocated, we would most likely be reducing the number of grants that would be written and covered out of the package in totality.
Glenn?
So do I understand you correctly to say that scaling of the application is not possible? In other words, the full amount that's identified for the strategic development, and I'll call it the front loading of the administrative tasks, has to be funded at the full level, and any shortage or reduction would have to come in actual direct services to the clients?
Yeah, I'm actually, hold on. Okay, can you guys hear me? I think I missed part of the question as we moved me over from attendee to panelist. So can you repeat that?
As you're probably aware, there's a process here where the committee is considering at least potentially reducing certain applicants. And my question was, that there seemed to me in my memory of the application that there were three kind of strategic components of the application, one of which was the development of a strategic overview of the types and nature of grants that might be available, then some sort of assessment of the applicability of certain applicants and so on. And then the third portion was actually providing services of advisement to the Measure Z applicant group. If in fact the amount was reduced, my question is this: are the first two elements scalable to try to maximize the amount of money available that goes directly to the applicant support? Or is that impossible? The totality of the strategic elements have to be in place before any of the rest of it makes any sense?
A little bit of both, if that makes sense. So let me take through the process. So essentially, we would meet with all participants in the plan, understand what their needs are, what their projects are, what they're looking to fund, either immediately or long-term, medium range goals, put it all together in a collective plan. That strategic plan would then match those projects and with funding opportunities and grant programs. We would calendar everything, kind of put everything into a work plan to understand what grants we'd be looking at, or what other funding opportunities, because we could also look outside of the grants world to fund some of these projects, and then go through the application process and actually work on behalf of those agencies and those applicants to prepare the applications themselves. So the scalability is there all throughout, but the front end and understanding all of the projects and needs of all of the potential applicants is less scalable, if that makes sense. So the easiest part to scale down would be the number of projects that would be applied for, grant applications we would actually utilize underneath the agreement.
I think I misunderstood that whole grant thing. I thought the whole thing was going just towards grants.
It is going just towards grants. You mean applying for grants or the strategic plan?
If we scale it down, less grants will be able to be written.
Yes, that like most likely. That's the that's the most scalable element of the process, given that the primary purpose is to develop that holistic strategic plan for all of the needs in the county and all of the different agencies, districts, cities, departments.
Sue?
In one of our discussions, Sean had said that that could be reduced to as low as 110,000. My reason for wanting to reduce it would be to see how successful it is. If we throw $275,000 at it the first year and we don't really see a return, to me, we just wasted a whole lot of money. If we throw a lesser amount at it and we see a return next year when they come and apply, we will be more apt to want to fund that because we see the results. It's a lot of money if we don't really get a lot back. And some of the agencies already talked about, they already write grants and they've been very successful on their own.
Okay. Do we have a motion on, we have a motion and a second? Any more discussion?
Could you restate the motion for us?
I don't know. That we, well, now it's changed again, that we would reduce it to 100, what'd you say?
I said 110, Tammy said 200.
Oh, 200, okay, that's her motion.
I believe 200 was the motion.
Right, was there a second for that? Okay, so let's vote on that first. So, at 200 to start, okay, we'll say all in favor, right?
Sure. Okay,
Okay,
so it was
opposed?
7 yes and 1 no
Okay,
to change the application to 200,000.
okay, so that passes. Okay, and the next one that I have on my list is, we already did the Fire Chiefs Association, is the City of Blue Lake. Is there anything in between that I missed? Okay,
No, there was applications number 11, 12, and 13 from Ms. Trent's list, but those applications have all been eliminated, so we're on 14,
Okay.
City of Blue Lake.
okay, City of Blue Lake. Who pulled that one? Bob?
My concern on this application is that the city is looking to utilize Measure Z funds to pay for services they've already contracted for with the sheriff's office. And I do acknowledge that every agency in the county, including the sheriff, as the service provider, everyone's struggling. Things are tight in order to go ahead and keep the wheels on the wagon and keep the wagon going down the road. But looking to backfill a contract that should have been budgeted and funded for just doesn't seem to be an appropriate use of the Measure Z funds.
Okay,
And that I'd recommend reducing that amount by 5,000 to 30,000.
okay. So down to 0.
No, down to reducing it
Oh.
to 30,000.
Oh, to 30,000.
They already
They already did that,
reduced it to
yeah.
30,000, so you take it to
Yep.
25, correct?
They reduced it last week by 5.
Then never mind.
Okay. You withdraw your motion?
Withdraw my motion.
Is there anybody else? Okay. And so, the next agency is number 16, unless there's something in between. Okay, Redwood Parks Conservancy. They voluntarily reduced 25% last week. Who pulled that one? Was that you?
No issue.
Okay.
No issue this time.
Yeah, it might have been me too, but that was before the reduction.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then application number 21. Is there anything in between there on that list? No?
Application number 20.
And what is that?
Public Works, Kathy Road, 45,000.
Okay. Was that you? No? Who pulled that one?
No issue.
Okay. Application number 21, Kamau. Who was that? Okay, Bob.
similar to the other applicants that are receiving an allocated funding amount from the Board of Supervisors. This, I know they've reduced their ask along the way as well, but because the board's already allocated funding to it, I would motion to lower it to 0.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay. Is there any discussion about that? Is there, did you say somebody from Kamau's on? Oh, you're here. Okay.
Discussion, yeah, that's not enough. Similar to the, at least 2 of the 4 applicants that were funded for 3 years by the Board of Supervisors, 2 of them were not given enough money. That's why they're applying again. So again, to just out of hand reduce them to 0 and discount their need, I just don't support that at all.
So it would be reduced the 122,000, which is the difference, right?
My reasoning for doing that is because they're getting funded what they got funded last year, and in this past year, they were able to get some grants, and so they don't have to lease ambulances anymore. So their expenses should have gone down from last year, and that was my reasoning for funding the same as they got last year, because their expenses went down this year.
Can we call the person from Kamau to come up, please? You can ask him. Hi, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to go ahead and share a few things, if that's okay, or just answer questions.
Yeah, right
specific
now,
questions.
yeah. And then we have a public comment on the next section. So do you want to ask him that, if that's true? I would like to know, so on your application, it shows that you're going to get some ambulances of your own, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that lowers your cost a lot from your rentals?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So I guess in clarifying some of this, one would be through Indian Health Services. We were able to secure an award for purchasing of 3 new ambulances.
Yeah.
That's a one-time funding. There's nothing such as tire upkeep, any of the maintenance costs, any of the gas, oil, supplies, upkeep, all of that is completely separate. The other thing would be the wages. So if you're looking at, if I can back up just a little bit so that everybody's on the same page. There's a Hoopa ambulance base. There's a Willow Creek ambulance base, okay? So there's already a there's a voluntary cut in saying that we aren't even putting forward any of the expenses of the Hoopa ambulance base. There's a secondary voluntary cut, and that we aren't even charging any overhead. So if you were to look at, say 30% as your indirect cost for your HR team, your administrative team, for your IT team, all of those different type of things, that's a second voluntary cut on top of that budget. So the budget before you, that all you're getting is just straight up the salaries for the Willow Creek ambulance base, providing services to that area, and then the items that are outlined of roughly about $100,000, which include those automotive costs. So I don't know if that helps out a little bit. So there's already been a lot of voluntary reductions in that. In regard to the other grant, there's not a secured grant. We did submit actually yesterday for a SAMHSA grant, and that's primarily around the over-the-bank training, the training for EMTs, and helping them move forward as EMTs. And obviously recruitment, retention is one of the most difficult things facing the county, and that's the purpose behind it. The other purpose behind it is it will include, there were oh my goodness, help me out a little bit with the AED units and the expense of those. And so there were, I think it was 16 in the last grant, and those were distributed throughout so that the gas station, the grocery store, the tribal chambers, in addition to a few more at Kamau Medical Center and OES, and those are for those AED units,
Okay.
and then addition to CPR trainings that occur for employees and for first responders.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn?
In past years, there's been some not so subtle communications to this committee that funding at less than the full level would likely result in the closure of the Willow Creek operation. Is that still the position of the administration of your organization?
What I will say as the administrator, I can say some things. This would obviously, any closure of health services would be a higher level in regard to our KMC Board of Directors as well as the Tribal Council. And so I don't want to bypass that decision-making process. But what I will say is that funding it at less than the amount of what's proposed in that budget means that we have to take money from a rural tribal clinic, which we know is, severely underfunded. You have to take that type of money or pull it from somewhere within the tribe to be able to supplement the revenue that isn't there.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, Sue?
So do you have any other source of funding?
For the ambulance?
Yes.
So if you want to break down, like as far as the Kamau Medical Center, so again, let me explain it. From an IHS standpoint, Indian Health Services standpoint, the money that they have, there's no allocation towards ambulance. Okay, so that's why they issued a one-time funding for rigs, but there's not a congressional allocation towards EMT services. So we're not getting money from IHS to provide ambulance services. And even if we were, there's still restrictions on that in the sense of this is for the Willow Creek ambulance base. It's not on the reservation. Yes, is it serving some tribal employees? Absolutely. But there's that consideration. So for the medical center itself, as far as the other funding that would be possibly be used, we submitted for a SAMHSA grant for training. And then other would be the third-party revenue. So we go to the DHCS, the CMS, tribal consultations, and advocating for higher-level third-party revenue, like reimbursements, or there's things you can do with your charge master and increase the amount of billables, and then essentially transfer that expense to the patients or their insurance companies. And then you're still having difficulty because even if you bill, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to collect it.
Anything else?
Question for staff. Could you remind me, help me understand in last year's process, how did we get from the 447 request to the 326 allocation? Was there a methodology or something that resulted in that outcome?
That was made on the dais through a motion of the board.
Do you know where the 122 came?
It was, if you recall, I mean, last year there was such limited amount of funding.
Yeah.
There were cuts to multiple applications, and it was more of a math problem up on the dais to get projects partially funded with the limited amount of funding that was there. No, there was no master calculation.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to say? Okay. Any other discussion? No? Okay. All right. So we have a motion on the floor. First and a second. So take a vote. Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Have a seat. I like it. Okay. So we'll take a vote. So the motion is to reduce it to zero, to not fund the 122,000. Okay. So all in favor? Okay.
Now go ahead and raise your hand if you are in favor of reducing it to zero.
Okay.
C2.
And noes?
Motion fails.
Okay. And the next is Public Works, number 22. Is that right?
I have Public Works, yes, correct, number 22, Public Works Equipment Replacement.
Okay. And who, was that you?
I didn't pull it. I just have a question for the Tom.
Okay.
The guy.
Let's wait for the motion. Do we have is there, who pulled that? Nobody? Okay. Maybe it was Darcy. I don't know.
We can blame everything on her today.
Yeah, Darcy. She's going to be the chair next year. Okay. Anybody? No? Okay, then we don't have a motion.
Can
Okay.
I ask him a question then?
Sure, of course.
Tom, I understand the carb thing. I'm in the same position that you are with my business. Is there any way any of the equipment that you need to replace can be filtered in order to prolong the life, or can you buy any used equipment that would lower the price tag?
No, we've already looked and explored and have done all of those options. We're up against the wall.
Thank you.
It's the law. All right. Is there any other applications? Sean? Sorry. Is there any other applications?
Last application is application number 23, Public Works, West Haven Drive for $25,000.
Okay, so we pull that. I think he said that, you know, the last three, that he would rather, we'd not even suggest it. He'd rather. Okay, well, we're through that process.
Okay, so the last thing that I would want is a motion from the committee to accept the new roster of applications with the reductions made. The reductions that were made in this process were to application number 9, reducing that to $200,000. And that brings the total request to 5.37 million, putting us over available funding by 1.24 million. So I just would like a motion to accept the new roster of applications.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Or is there any discussion? No, all in favor?
Thank you.
Okay. So now we start the ranking process, right? Is that the next? Okay, I would like to take like a 10-minute break if we could. Some of us came from far away. And we'll be back here at, I have my glass on, 3:45? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, we'll be back here at 3:45. Thank you. Submit our recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. And we'll start out with a public comment section. If anybody has anything they want to say during this, before we start. No?
Oh.
Not on this, not on the ranking. Right?
Yes, so we'll start with public comment,
Right.
and then we'll do committee discussion, then we'll rank each application.
Right.
So this is the time for the public to comment on your application, if you would like.
Right.
May I make a brief comment?
Pardon me?
May I make a comment, public comment?
Sure.
I think I wanted to express, there is not an application in this collection that I don't want to see funded. And so as we go through this process, it's not that I'm voting for in ways that say I don't want this funded. I'm voting in ways that I feel best serve the spirit of Measure Z and serve our community. And I know each one of us here has different opinions about how we get to that spot. And it's through this process that we merge those opinions and find that priority list. And so I just want everybody that spent the time to show up to the meetings and express the value of their projects. They are very, very valuable. And I don't want that to get lost in this process.
Right, and I also want to mention that if the county position gets funded for the grant writing group, if you applied, even if you don't, get the funding, you still have access to that person to help. And so I just want to point that out. All right, is anybody, any public comment besides Nick's? No? Okay. So we'll move ahead. Do you want to explain the ranking system, please, Sean?
Sure, and I'll go ahead and put the spreadsheet up on the board. Several years ago, your committee started this process where we rank each application according to a 1, 2, or 3. The highest ranking, if you vote that an application is your number 1 highest ranking, it will be assigned 1 point. If you say it's your number 2 or a 2 priority on your own scale, it receives 2 points. If it is a number 3 on your scale, it receives 3 points. You can only vote once per application. At the end, it will tally up, and the applications that receive the lowest scores will be the highest priority applications. After we go through this first round, we will see how everybody ranks. If there are ties, we'll go to a second round and a third round and so on. So right now we are in the primary sort portion of this process.
Okay.
Ginger, can I make sure I understand since I'm new?
Yes.
We're going to do a 1, 2, or 3 on every single application. Okay. Thank you.
Bob?
I'd like to also echo what Nicholas said about the projects, in that the ranking process is something that every committee member takes seriously, and a lot of research and thinking and discussion amongst the group during these meetings goes into our thoughts of how we go ahead and rank them, and that all these applications are really terrific, and it would be great if they could all be funded for the full amount that they deserve, and probably for all the other applications that didn't even get turned in, where there is also a need.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Thank you for your new list up there. You did good. So the total that we still need to, just remind me, that we need to reduce by or modify by is 1?
So we are, total requests is $5.379 million. We have $4.1 million available. That puts us over by $1.247 million.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let us begin.
Ready for the round robin? So I am going to really rely on you all to know whether you voted once or not on this on these applications. I do not want to go through a round robin and call each of your names 100 times. So I will call for, if this application is your number 1 priority, raise your hand. I'll just count, and I'll go back and record the votes later. So please remember whether or not you voted on an application.
And vote 1, 2, or 3 and write it down, because usually Sean has a helper. It's hard to do these counts. And so, just like put it next to it, a 1, a 2, or a 3. Okay, go.
Okay. All right. So we will start. Application number 1, the City of Fortuna, the School Resource Officer for $197,000. If this is your number 1, if this is a priority 1 for you, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. If this is a priority 2 for you, please raise your hand. 2, 3. And if this is a priority 3 for you, please raise your hand. See 1. Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services evacuation software platform for $188,000. If this is a priority 1 for you, please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5. If this is priority 2 for you, please raise your hand. 1, and priority 3. 2. City of Arcata, this is a priority 1 for you, $118,000 for the juvenile diversion officer, priority 1, or juvenile diversion counselor, sorry. This is priority 1 for you, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Priority 2. 2, priority 3. 2. Sheriff's Office, application number 7, $108,000 for a laser scanner. If this is a priority 1 for you, please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4. This is a priority 2 for you, please raise your hand. 1. Priority 3. 3. Thank you. Application number 8, Willow Creek Blue Lake Fire, application for $216,000, out of district response. If this is a priority 1 for you, please raise your hand. None. Priority 2. 1, and priority 3. Thank you. Application number 9, County Administrative Office, $200,000 for grant consultation and grant writing. If this is a priority 1 for you, please raise your hand. 1, priority 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, and priority 3. 2. Thank you. Application number 10, Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association, $2.1 million. If this is a priority 1 for you, please raise your hand. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ginger, is that a
Yes.
5? This is a priority 2 for you, please raise your hand. 1, and priority 3. 2. Thank you. City of Blue Lake, $30,000 for contracted service with the Sheriff's Office. If this is priority 1 for you, please raise your hand. 0, priority 2. 1, 2, 3, and priority 3. 2, 3, 5. Thank you. Application number 15, City of Rio Dale, $80,000 for a clerical position. If this is priority 1 for you, please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4. Priority 2. 2, and priority 3. 2. Thank you. Redwood Parks Conservancy, lifeguard position for $57,000. If this is priority 1, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Priority 2. 2, priority 3. 2 more. Thank you. Let's see, application number 17, Public Works Department, $500,000 for Matola Road. This is priority 1 for you. Please raise your hand. That is a lot of hands. 7, priority 2, 1. Thank you. Application number 18, Public Works Department, $165,000 for Old Arcata Road. If this is priority 1, please raise your hand. 1, priority 2, 0, and priority 3, the rest of you. Application number 19, Public Works Department, $125,000 for Elk River Road. Priority 1, please raise your hand. 1, priority 2, 0, and 3. Be the rest of you. Thank you. Application number 20, Public Works Department, $45,000 for Cathy Road. Priority 1. 1. Priority 2, and priority 3. Thank you. Application number 21, Kamal Medical Center, $122,000 for ambulance service. This is priority 1. Please raise your hand. 2. Priority 3, or priority 2, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, and priority 3. 2 of you. Thank you. Application number 22, Public Works Department, $1.1 million for replacing 3 pieces of heavy equipment. Priority 1, please raise your hand. 6, priority 2, 1, I'm sorry, that was 7 for the first. And priority 3, 0. Thank you. And application number 23, West Haven Drive, $25,000. If this is priority 1, please raise your hand. 1, priority 2, 1, and priority 3. The rest of you. Thank you very much. And if you'll just give me a second, that completes our first round of funding. Give me a minute to resort. That's the point.
Yeah. Yeah. And the least, thank goodness we had a few, yeah. Next year, we're going to have less money, so Oh, asks, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So while Sean's doing that, I just want to thank Eric again from Access Humboldt. He does a wonderful job. He gets right in on whoever's speaking right away. He's very good. We appreciate his effort. And he didn't know until I said he was going to stay till 5 o'clock, so good thing he didn't have a party going on. And thank you, Stephanie, who's been wonderful on the phone and on the videos and taking care of that for us. We appreciate all the effort that the staff puts out for our agencies and for us. And I did hear that Darcy is fine. I know that she didn't come, but I heard from Stephen that she's fine. She just couldn't make it. So.
All right, if you would like, Chair, we could see the results. So this column that I'm highlighting are our results here. Our available funding would take us down to application number 10. So these applications number 17, 22, 1, 2, and 10 would all receive funding. That takes us to $4.086 million. The next application would be City of Arcata and City of Realdale and Redwood Parks Conservancy are all tied at the next. So again, we have $4.13 million, and we could potentially fund, I believe, one of these applications. But we know for sure these applications would all receive funding. So I would recommend that we do a second round at least for these three, Arcata, Realdale, and Redwood Parks.
Can you keep going down just for a little bit? The rest, let me see. Okay. Okay, so you're recommending that we go down, that we go up to the top one. Okay. Those.
Yes.
Because they're tied.
Correct.
Basically. Okay. Let me just look and see what they're doing.
How much money do we have left?
So it's 4.13. Sorry, I'm doing math on the fly. Never a good idea for me.
So you're saying that we can go down as far as what? To include the fire. Okay. All right. Okay. So I would say we re-vote on three different ones.
Yes, there is about $45,665,000 left to allocate.
And which ones are tied? Which ones are we voting on?
Arcata,
City of
Realdale,
Arcata. Mhm.
and Redwood Park. So there's not enough funding to fund any of these applications completely.
City, Realdale.
What? Billy, what were you going to say?
This is partial funding. I would just submit that we just send the Board of Supervisors the existing list with the balance of 45,000, and they can decide what to do. That would be my recommendation.
Are you making that a motion?
I would make a motion that we submit as is.
I second.
All right.
As part of the discussion in the past, we have gone through and addressed ties to try to show some sort of more complete prioritized list for the Board of Supervisors to look at.
But I think, I think when it was a lot more money when it was to those three. For $45,000, that's the total.
Well, right, and if it's $45,000, that's, partial funding for one of those. Would we like to make a recommendation on what we think that should be? Or are we leaving that up to the board?
Well, we have a motion and a second on that, so go ahead, Billy.
When you look at each one of those are actual positions, you know, and so I just would leave it up to the board at that point of what's best for that $45,000.
I agree. Glenn?
I would support the position Nicholas outlined. I think there is value in identifying these. The amount of time necessary to do it is literally a couple of minutes, so I think it's a good time investment.
Okay, any other discussion? We have turned it in for a lot more for them to decide. I know what you're saying, but, you know, it's, they have had to deal with bigger amounts, so, okay, well then, should we take a vote? Yeah, and I second it. So your motion is to go ahead and just send it in as is and let them decide on the extra $45,000, how it's going to be reduced or modified? Okay. So can I call for a vote?
Sure. If you are in support of the motion, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And opposed. Motion passes 6-2.
Okay. So we will be sending this to the board. Yeah.
Put that back up for a second.
Can you send that out to us
Of course.
later today or tomorrow?
And just scroll to the top of that. And so application number. Oh, excuse me. So application number 11 is the last one that's fully funded at this point, presuming the revenue comes as it's been projected, is it correct?
That's line 11, application number 10, the fire chiefs.
Okay.
Okay.
So we only funded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items.
That's correct.
Okay.
Recommended. 5
Recommended.
items.
We don't fund anything. And again, if you weren't on that list, you have a supervisor, and you can go to the Board of Supervisors, and we're just the recommenders, we're not the deciders. So I want to thank everybody so much for being so dedicated this year. Everybody showed up, and thank you again, Stephanie and Eric and Sean especially. You're such a hard worker. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. He's easy to work with. I call him every day. I bug him every day. I call him every day. Okay, Sue?
So just so I know how this moves forward to the Board of Supervisors. If we attend that meeting at the Board of Supervisors, do we as a Measure Z member have to say this is what we agree to, or can we personally say we think this and this and this should, like for instance, if I say, I don't know, fire should be cut and this and this and this should be funded, do we do that, or do we say as a board we decided this and that's?
As a committee member,
Yeah.
probably, I'm going to say probably not in good form, but you can do public, anytime there's a public comment, you can say, you know, I disagree with the way that this went in, and this is how I would have done it, but, you know, ultimately they have the final say based on their lack of money. I think we did really well considering, you know, that there wasn't a lot of money to give. I feel good about it, and I feel like moving forward, a lot of agencies will be helped.
And so, sorry, through the chair. This process is what it is right now. Some people have expressed discomfort, and there are complications with it. There's certain dynamics that this committee may wish to change in the future. As we look forward to meeting in the fall as a wrap-up to find out how applications went for this year and look ahead to next year, I would recommend if there are any changes to the process that committee members think about it. I'm available to talk about changes to the process for next year. Like you said, Chief Robertson, this is a process that we had this year is not exactly in writing. There's no resolution or ordinance guiding the way that we go about recommending to the board. There's a resolution that talks about potentially receiving applications and providing a forum for public discourse, but the way that we go about that business is not laid out anywhere. So if this committee wishes to change the way that we go about our business, now is the time to begin thinking about that for fiscal year 25, 26.
And we can do it in September, right?
Correct.
We can make changes in September for the following year.
Correct.
Bob?
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And in light of the fact that the Measure Z funding is now reaching the bottom of the barrel with very little to allocate or recommend allocations to, combined with the board allocating certain funding amounts each year, it definitely seems that perhaps something different than what we've been doing might be in order. And what I would like to suggest to see if there's any thoughts from the committee on this is perhaps between now and September to see if Sean could come up with some recommendations for how we might
Do it
proceed
differently.
moving forward.
Yeah, and anybody else, I know there's new people, you know, on our committee, and we have a new person at the very end, Taylin. She's going to jump in here pretty soon as all this is moving on next year. So, yeah, I think we should all come up with, you know, or anybody that's continuing should come up with ideas, and we can talk about it in September. And can you put that on our agenda? Yeah, and please come to the, you know, the board meetings, the budget meetings, and participate if you would like.
I would also like to talk about September. I think one of the things that we really need to include is what does this process look like after that 3-year plan has lapsed? What is the plan moving forward after this structure times out? And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for us communicating with the board and being able to make recommendations that are meaningful. And personally, I think that's our biggest kind of elephant in the room for the next couple of years. And the sooner we can have meaningful discussion about that, the better the result will be. Or at least the clearer we can be as we try to advocate for what we see, and allow the board to make the decisions that reflect their constituents.
Right, and change, you know, there has to be an advisory board, I mean, a committee, that's part of the ballot, and it may change that we see things differently, you know, how things are going to come down and, you know, go from 4.1 to 500,000 or something in a year, you don't know, you know, that's a huge difference in how we're going to participate in all that. Any other discussion? Glenn?
Did I understand you correctly in previous comments? I gathered the assumption that the staff was going to come forward probably in September with a recommendation for an application procedure or policy regarding the reserve amount. Is that something you plan to bring back to us for some comments and discussion in September?
That's something that we can talk about at the board. Again, back in March, or I'm sorry, in January, when the board adopted that spending plan, there were some parameters as recommended by this committee for how that funding would be allocated. So I'll seek further direction from the board when we present these recommendations to them in April to see if the board wants us to provide a full written policy as to how that reserve is spent. But there are already some guidelines in place to talk about funding those top 4 projects first if we run out of funding, and then running down to county applications, if that makes sense.
When you say top 4, you're talking about the top
outside
4 in the
agencies.
board's allocation sequence.
Correct. In the 3-year spending plan, the 4 allocations were given the priority by this committee and the board.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for coming. I know some of you came from far, far away. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next year. We'll see you at the budget hearings, hopefully. And they're in June. And do you know what the date? We don't know what the dates are yet.
I believe it's June 6th.
Oh, June 6th. Write that on your calendar. June 6th, Budget Committee, you know. Okay, thank you very much.